So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Joy-Nostalg, and welcome to another Wellness Wednesday. Now, the theme for this month is, of course, still unity. But this time, we talk about unity through the lenses of psychology. Moreover, we talk about unity within support groups and why we must have support groups in the workplace or even virtually online to talk more about support groups and how it's very useful in our daily interactions and work. We have with us a friend who is no longer a stranger. Again, the speaker for this morning is a licensed counseling psychologist and part-time lecturer at the psychology department at the Ateneo. Since 2015, she has been working at the Ateneo Bulatao Center for Psychological Services. Uh, JNG, let's all welcome Miss Joey Umandap. Good morning, Miss Joey.
Hi, Jello. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me again here. So, the topics that you actually come up with are very interesting as well, and they're also personal interests of mine. So, I hope I can share something new with everyone. For today, I was actually deliberating on how to come up with this topic or module, and then I was thinking that a lot of you will probably have ideas on how you can foster support groups in the workplace already, or later on you can think of some. But I guess what I wanted to focus on first before that would be the importance of having a support group, because as it said in research, there's so much there's so much support for it. It's a protective factor during distressing periods, and it's one of the things that can pull us through. And I hope that this gives you an insight on that, or at least of how we can help each other through this very difficult and unusual times, right? So when I saw this image, I recall the analogy I said before about being in a pandemic and work being stressful because now you have to work while holding up an umbrella, right? You have to work while protecting yourself. But then what happens with people who have very small umbrellas while other people have bigger umbrellas? What happens if under that umbrella you have to support your children, your family members, or other people? Or what happens if you have so many boxes to carry to and from your car to your office, right? So there's so many factors to consider there, and it's also quite interesting when we, I guess, base our questions on that analogy. And I wanted to discuss some topics that may not be new to some of you, but I feel are also important because it will lead us to the importance of unity and community, and at the same time perhaps make us more cognizant of what goes on in underneath all that, as opposed to just the behavioral factors. So the first is the need for community. We'll be talking about Father Alberto Alejo's Loob, and then talking about the sad reality now, a world of disunity. And then how do we solve this? Through inclusion and human agency, that we're able to solve this. And lastly, the 6 season families and communities. And it might seem disjointed, the topics I chose, but I hope I can weave it together so it makes more sense. So Father Bert, or Father Albert Alejo, wrote his dissertation on Ang Loob ng Tao. So he basically talks about our connections, right, as human beings. If you read this quote from his work, he says that in this image, sa ibabaw ng tubig, ang mga pulo or isla ay magkakahiwalay. Ngunit kapag nagpalalim ka sa pagsisid, matutuklasan mo na sa kalaliman sila pala ay nagkakaugnay. And I feel that these words are very meaningful because at our core, as Filipinos even, we're very relational. Much of ourselves is defined by others. So there's this there's really a sense of community. It's part of our way of being. We have to be connected with others. And this is also true for a lot of Western cultures, because when you think about it, even Jungian psychology is based on the collective unconscious. He was saying that, okay, if you look in a forest, the psychologist named Carl Jung, you'll see that the trees are separate. But if you look underneath, if you look below the ground, you'll see that the roots are interconnected. So this is how we really perceive understanding ourselves and taking care of ourselves. There is an inherent connectedness and interdependence in humanity even, and it's very much defined in the Filipino or local setting as well. And given this understanding, I guess what I'm trying to put across is that if we want to take care of ourselves, if we want mental well-being, physical well-being, we have to take care of each other as well. So there's no going around it. If we want to take care of ourselves, our families even, then we have to take care of society or communities. Um, because a community is resilient when members of the population are connected to one another and also work together. So I know this is like a wordy slide, but I would like to highlight some words. We're connected, we work together, because when we do, this is the importance of social support, we are able to function and sustain critical systems even under stress. So hindi tayo mapipilay. When something goes wrong, it's okay. We can still move on. We can still manage somehow. The members by themselves can adapt to changes. So when there are changes physically, environmentally, socially, financially, like what's happening right now, the members can adapt because the system will allow it. The community can allow for that. And the community provides a buffer. Um, the community is also self-reliant. So in cases wherein external resources are limited or cut off, think about the government now. If there's not much support, pag kulang ng ayuda, there's not much coherence or perhaps leadership, then the community can provide that. The community can provide some form of support. If And that's what happens. That's why communities, it's very important during times of crisis. We have this program called PFA, online PFA, and it helps the members just help themselves and help each other. And the goal of that is that if you build community resilience, people will learn to take care of their own community. And if they can take care of their own community, hopefully they can echo that so that other communities can learn from that. And we can build a stronger nation, a stronger world perhaps, but we start from the community. We start from that small group because the community and its members, ideally, if they are resilient, will learn from their experiences. So even if we're not doing everything perfectly over now, even if we're committing mistakes or perhaps doing things that are not beneficial for a lot of our members right now, over time we can improve upon it. And that is resilience. That is community resilience. When we can bounce back, when we can keep on moving forward despite obstacles and hurdles. However, a current and sad reality in our world now, and I'm sure a lot of you are well aware of this, is that there is a lot of separatedness. Sometimes communities even function in silos. Sometimes families only care for their own families and are not as cognizant of other families' needs. And there's a sense of separatedness. I can take care of my own, bahala na kayo. And sometimes, if that's the mindset, then we also notice that, how much of it applies to our personal mindset as well, right? You notice there's a sense of separatedness. And there is also tension because of our differences and uniqueness. Because a lot of us are going through unique challenges, while many of us are going through similar problems, similar situations. When we're under stress, the tendency is to think, ako lang, or the tendency is to protect what you can first. So instead of being open and expansive to others' experiences, we tend to zoom in on our own experiences. In that sense, we work on our own. We forgot that we can work with others. And this is what happens when you see, like, sometimes during these challenging times, yes, you see a lot of people reaching out and helping, but a lot of people who are struggling, a really sad reality is that they will tend to just zone in on their own problems and forget to reach out, forget to help others just because they're suffering themselves. Um, and this is why I would like to introduce intersectionality. It's a concept in social psychology that I hope people will begin to understand. I think some of you may have heard this or come across this because of the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, right? Given their situation now, there's a lot of discrimination and racial injustice. But I think to a certain extent, we can also apply this concept here in the local context, in the local setting. So basically, what is intersectionality? It was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1991. And there is a lot to talk about. So I will not go to the deeper meanings of this. I will only explain what I can given the context that we need to, given what we need to understand. So if you want to read more about it, there are a lot of resources online. But in a nutshell, basically, it says that we have various social identities, and this is according to our age, our gender, our race, our socioeconomic class, our profession. We have a lot of identities, and intersectionality is where these different social identities intersect. So our class or race, our gender, where they intersect, that's our intersectionality. And our intersectionality provides us a unique range of experiences. I guess this is what makes us different and unique from each other because it influences our meanings, it influences our experiences. So if you are a single mother and you come from a lower socioeconomic class, this will really affect your experiences when you compare yourself to a single mother from a higher socioeconomic class. So there's still a difference. So if you, at some point in time, you may be subject to discrimination because of these identities. This is what intersectionality hopes to address. And this is why Kimberly Crenshaw coined it. So explain in more detail later, but just to give you a context of how it developed, it came from women of color. Kimberly Crenshaw was saying that women who are Black experience discrimination because they are Black and also experience discrimination because they are women. So it's a minus and a minus. In that way, they are more disadvantaged. So if you're a single mom, you have to take care of your child and you come from a lower socioeconomic class, then you have more injustices, more discrimination to deal with, right? So if you are also gay or if you're part of the LGBT community, then you will also experience more discrimination, and the intersection of these identities will really affect your experience. So sometimes this is how it works out, right? You have to consider all of these. If you have a disability, say, or if your sexuality, your geographic location, if you are based farther from the city, then you experience some form of discrimination. And when I say discrimination, I'm not talking about outright discrimination. Sometimes it could be something more nuanced and something more unnoticeable, but it's still there, such as, for example, when people say that, bata ka pa, hindi mo to maiintindihan. Right? So there's some discrimination in that. Someone is saying you're different, you won't understand this. Or when they say, mayaman ka naman, hindi mo alam kung anong pinagdadaanan ko. So that's also a form of discrimination. Someone is saying you are not allowed or you are not able to do something just because of an identity of yours. And if we put all our identities together, it will affect our intersectionality and our experience of discrimination. So why does it matter, right? Why does intersectionality matter in our lives? Because at its worst, as you can see in the US, these factors cause not just tension among different groups and subgroups, but they also cause and perpetuate inequality, oppression, and domination. So some people, mas nakakaangat, yung ibang tao, less so. And it's happening. It's happening everywhere. There's a lot of inequality everywhere. And while it may not be as observed in certain contexts, in milder forms, our intersectionality can cause distance and isolation. And I talk about this because sometimes our intersectionality will not always be about oppression or domination. Sometimes it's just about difference. So, okay, you're from accounting, you won't get this. I'm from marketing, hindi mo maintindihan yung trabaho ko. Or accounting can say, hindi mo naiintindihan kung ano yung trabaho ko kasi marketing ka naman. Or iba naman yung ginagawa mo. Hindi mo malalaman kung anong pinagdadaanan ko. There's this sense of you are other. And that is what Father Albert Alejo talks about. Sometimes we forget to feel or we forget to think that we're connected. But still we're connected. Even if, say, you're from accounting, you're from marketing, or you're from HR, we're still connected in this community, right? We still work in the same job, right? But sometimes those differences that we see more, or intersectionality, can affect the way we are towards each other. And it manifests in sometimes very, very small forms. And sometimes it's not even problematic. But when you think about it, over time, if we don't notice these differences, if we don't notice how our behaviors towards this, then it can cause more factions, more distance, more separation. And what we want during these times is to connect each other, to find those differences and to say, okay, it doesn't matter that much. You know, yes, I think you're different, but I think we're alike in some other way. So how do we do this, right? What can we do about it? I guess I brought that to light because what we can do is to notice it, just become aware of it. Don't hide it under the rug or say, ah, it doesn't matter naman. Or I'm not like that. I think a lot of people will say, ah, hindi ako ganyan. I don't discriminate. But sometimes we can't help it. We do. That's how our brain works. That's how our brain organizes. We will stereotype and assign people to certain groups because it helps us remember more. It helps us navigate the world better. But when we notice these minor differences, these nuances in behavior, we can notice it. We can call it out and say, baka isipin nyo na nagmamagaling ako kasi mas matagal na ako dito, pero baka I just want to share. Just calling it out, just saying, okay, I may come from a privileged background, but I also get where you're coming from. Just noticing it and just mentioning it with respect, with courtesy, also respecting the other's dignity by talking about it. Perhaps saying na, okay, hindi ako sumasama sa inyo dati kasi akala ko hindi nyo ako maiintindihan dahil ganito ako. Pero I just want to say this na medyo nalileft out ako dati kasi hindi nyo ako masyado kinakausap. Parang things like that. Coming from a place of openness and understanding and you saying, no, you're welcome. It's okay. In that regard, we can clear the air. If there is anything underground that people don't talk about, we can just, a bit at a time, call it out, notice it, do something about it. And then hopefully that sparks more conversation, more communication, and more connection. So we're now moving from tension to inclusion. Instead of being separated, we are finding ways to connect and link with each other. Instead of being distant, we are now connecting. Because I was looking for a quote from a psychologist, but this is the one from Pope Francis. I think really, really sparked more in me. He says that the only way for individuals, families, and societies to grow, the only way for the life of peoples to progress is via the culture of encounter. So it's a culture in which all have something good to give and all can receive something good in return. If we're not communicating, if we're not talking because we think other people are different or because we feel we're different, then we won't be able to encounter the other. And it, as Father Alejo would say, it is only when it is Tagalog siya, but I forgot the term. But it is only when we see the other that we can also see more of ourselves. So it isn't our relationality that we can help others. And I just want to pause quickly for this question from Chrissy. She asks, will stereotyping of one group also cause the stereotype group to do the same? If so, how will that vicious cycle end? That's a very good question. The vicious cycle will not end unless someone calls it out, unless we bring it to light. So I guess that's what happens. Quickly lang, there was this research on there was this one teacher who conducted an experiment on in groups and out groups. So in groups are the cool ones, out groups they're the not so cool ones. She asked students, these are grade school students, I think grade 2 or grade 3. So she, in the first day of class, she said, okay, those people who are brown-eyed will will get to take recess last, will get to eat later, will also get to reply later, and they'll also get to play later. So she put a ribbon around all the children who were brown-eyed. And then what they did was she would assign other people who were not brown-eyed. They would get all the privileges first. The brown-eyed people would get the privileges last. And this happened for the whole day. The next day, she removed the ribbons and she made the other group experience this. All the people who were not brown-eyed, she put a ribbon around them. I'm not so sure with the details, but she put a ribbon around them and they got to experience the privileges last. And in this way, she taught intersectionality and stereotyping and in-groups and out-groups and discrimination to young children. They now felt what it was like to be discriminated against, to be last. And then they were able to appreciate, okay, just because I have brown eyes or just because I'm like this doesn't make me any different from other. It made people want to respect other people more because they felt what it was like to be discriminated against. And right now it's not so clear in our setting. We don't have African Americans, we don't have Black people, but it's a lot to do with the social classes. It's a lot to do with our professions. It's a lot to do where we come from in life even. And until we bring that to light, how we discriminate against others, whether it's by thought or by deed, we won't be able to do anything about it. So thank you for that question. Then how do we do it, right? How do we do it with empathy? How do we encounter and still respect each other? We can do it in empathy is another class on its own. It's another module on its own. But I felt what was most relevant with describing empathy for this topic would be that we can express our connection through three ways. One is cognitive, just sensing another person's perspective or view, and communicating it and how they will understand it. So it's just saying, mukhang naghihirap ka kasi you have 3 children to take care of and there's no partner or you have parents to take care of. Just noticing that and just saying, how must it be for you? How is it difficult for you? What's the most difficult for you? Just asking questions. And then emotional type of empathy, it's the ability to feel what someone else feels. So reflecting back the question na, mukhang nahihirapan ka kasi ang dami mong trabaho. Or mukhang nahihirapan ka kasi ang dami mong challenges ngayon. May sakit yung reflecting the feeling instead of the cognitive or the thought, it's the feeling you're reflecting or that you're drawing out. Then there's empathic concern without asking, being able to sense what another person needs from you. So if like you're in the workplace, it's hard to gauge this now because we're in our own separate homes. But perhaps you notice in a meeting, someone is not participating as much, someone is more quiet than usual. You notice like a colleague not submitting work on time, just sensing, okay, perhaps this person needs something. Perhaps I just need to check in on this person. If we have this culture of really checking in on each other and not just, if we have this culture of really checking in on each other and also waiting for them to respond, then that's a way of fostering community already. That's a big step already. Sometimes people say good morning, tapos that's it, tapos na. But if we just check in and ask, how are you? Allow people to feel heard, validated, and seen, that's a big way to connect with them already. So please do not underestimate the value of asking how others are. And I hope you can respond by answering honestly as well and respectfully as well. So can we really do something about it? Given all this, parang, di ba, parang intersectionality, discrimination, that's a social problem. We can never really do anything about it. But the thing is, I believe we can in that small community that we have. We may not be able to solve the world problem, but in the groups that we're in, and the departments that we're in, and then later on in the company that we're in, yes, we can do something about it. And Albert Bandura says this. He developed the social cognitive theory. He says that to succeed, people need a sense of self-efficacy, to struggle together with resilience to meet the inevitable obstacles and inequities of life. He coined the term human agency and self-efficacy, but he also saw the importance of the environment in this. Because human agency, this is our ability to feel that yes, we can do something about it. Yes, may problema ako, things are hard now, pero magagawan to ng solusyon. May hope pa, may pag-asa pa. Human agency is our awareness and our sense of control in how we engage with the world. So how does this happen? In how we move and how we think. Sometimes people will feel helpless or confused or disappointed or lost. It's because they don't have a sense of agency. People who are experiencing debilitating depression and anxiety, they lack human agency. They feel they can't do anything about their world anymore. But if we are in an environment where human agency is encouraged, when people feel accepted and safe and empowered, then they can also feel more able to deal with the challenges of day-to-day life. In this regard, we can influence and transform social relations in dispositions. So if we have human agency, we feel more able to call it out. We can bring it out the light, and then we will feel, okay, I can do something about it. You can say, okay, I feel that that colleague is left out. What can I do? Baka I can ask her how she is. I can reach out myself, wonder what's going on with her. Then that might encourage her to join the others later on. This person is not attending the meeting all the time. I wonder why, right? Then reaching out to them. And then perhaps they need support, internet, then just give them whatever support they need, if you are able, of course. So how? And how do we do it in the workplace, right? And one way to go back is one way is to go back to the basic unit of society. There are a lot of frameworks that I was thinking of including for this module, but I think one that resonated most with me is the Six C's of Discipline by by Dr. Hanika Randam. Just to give you a context, she's one of a child psychologist and a play therapist, and she founded the Mind, Learning, and Compassion Institute. So I really like her work, and I felt I put this here because a lot of you might find this relevant. A lot of you will have families of your own or are part of families even. And I was thinking, okay, this is the workplace. We need discipline, not just support, right? We need to be able to work, to function. There's economic justice in that we have to earn. We have to make a living. And how do we do that? We need discipline. We need structure. We need something to work in so we understand how we can contribute to that structure. But at the same time, it has to be underlined with respect and empathy. There has to be that form of support, and now more than ever we need this given this difficult time we're all in. So what's the 6 C's of discipline and how can we apply it to the workplace? The first is conviction. Be convinced. In this framework she's talking to the parents and how to parent, but here I guess I'm going to apply it to how we can be with each other. When you say with conviction, when you're laying out a rule, when you're saying something, be convinced about that policy. Tama ba to? Will this apply to all? Right? Will this be fair? There's no point in setting a policy or applying a rule or setting a guideline if you're not even sure that it's needed. But if you're firm about it, but if you're firm with your boundaries, even that I have a family and I would really appreciate it if you can not call me after 6 p.m. because I want to focus on my children, perhaps. Then, if someone calls you past 6 p.m., say, I can't. Can I work on this tomorrow? Because because I want to be with my child right now. It's setting boundaries and being convinced and then sticking to it. Of course, sometimes you have to be flexible, right? But more often than not, we have to set boundaries and then we have to stick to it. Or we can tell our boss or we can tell our colleagues na I can do this for you, but is it okay if you give me 1 week? Then stick to that 1 week. Don't go over. Also respect their time. Also respect the rule that you set for yourself and what you communicated to others. Be convinced and be firm with it. The next C would be clarity. There has to be common understanding. When we say something to other people, make sure they understand it. And that is so important now because sometimes we're all we're all trying to deal with it. We're all trying to grapple with it, but we have different realities as well. But if you like say communicate something, this is what we need to do, ask others to repeat it in their own words. Ask others to reply back. Ask others to question, just so you're sure you're aligned. That way there's clarity. It's clear. We all are on the same page. Next is consistency. We have to make sure that it applies to all, right? So it's not just for one department or one person or this set of people. It applies to all and we can apply it to several contexts. The next C would be consequences. If something was not done properly, if something has to be corrected, we say it. Of course, with respect. And at the same time, we also affirm what's right. We tend to focus on what's wrong, sometimes correct, correct, correct. Minsan we forget to validate the right things that others are doing. So congratulate, celebrate other people's little wins and say, good job, tama yon. Or I like that you did it this way. Okay yun na naisip mo yan. Say things like that to each other. That's how we build community and that's how we can also connect to each other. Minsan we're thinking, wow, ang galing nun ah. Paano yun naisip yun? But we don't say it. We don't feel it's important what we're saying. But it's also important, right? Particularly if it's a positive feedback. So just send a message to your colleague. Okay yung ginawa mo or nagustuhan ko na ginawa mo to. I like that you were so upbeat in the meeting earlier because I was so sleepy. Natulungan ako. It helped me wake up. Or thank you for summarizing this or for asking this question. I had the same concern. Things like that. Of course, care with empathy and respect. This underlines all the C's. And lastly is communication. Dr. Karen Dung came out with this later on in the model. But communication, I feel, is the channel where all of this happens. And there is no community unless you communicate, unless we verbalize and externalize. If we're thinking it, or sometimes we think we're doing it already, sometimes people can't read our nonverbals. Sometimes it will really help to ask to bring it out. Sometimes it will help if we really wait for the answer. We say something, we wait for it to come back, the answer to come back, and then we respond again. Laying all this down will take a lot of time. But if there is this attitude, if there is this culture of communication and care and empathy in the workplace, it might take some time setting it up, building it up, but it's an important foundation for a lot of work to take place. Because if we have inefficient communication processes, perhaps, if we're not sure how we can understand others, how do we do our work efficiently, right? But if we have this as a groundwork for our team, then we can move faster, we can move quicker, then we're all on the same page. People are also motivated to work more because it's clear what's expected of them. And this is an important quote from Dr. Karandang. She says it's important to go back to basics. We have to discipline with dignity. Dignity with respect, starting with our families, starting with our children, and moving on with organizations, corporations, and the national level. Because discipline, dignity, and self-worth are the best gifts you can give to the Filipino child. And not coincidentally, this is also what our country needs most today. Because if we discipline by lashing out, by always pointing out what's wrong, I guess that there's no leadership in that. There's no community in that. And if you notice, it's when we have that culture of really giving and listening and caring in the family. Hopefully, when our children grow up, when they're adolescents, and also when they're adults already, they can do the same for their own children. There was actually this study wherein people or children were interviewed, and they were asked, do you get why your parents set these rules? Do you get why there's no iPad before time, why they limit screen time, why you're not allowed to watch TV, or why you have to be home at a certain time? A lot of the children answered, yes, I understand why we have those rules. I understand why we have to do this. But then they also said, but I wish my parents said it with more respect. I wish they also asked me. Or sometimes I wish I was also involved in their decision. And it will take time, of course, to get everyone's consensus. But imagine these children, if they also felt that their parents felt they were important too, that they were part of the decision making, they would be more compelled, or they would be more actively following those rules. Same goes for the workplace. If we feel involved, if we feel valued and heard, then we're motivated to be part of that community. But if it's very hierarchical or structural, that someone lays down the rules and we're all expected to follow without understanding, without feeling included, and sometimes we feel that the policy is not even amenable to us, then we feel left out. But if people bother to ask, if people bother to check in, then there's more community and engagement there. Then we also feel that, okay, I can ask. I can ask for help. I can ask for support. So how can you do this, right, to help your colleagues? Two simple answers, and these are based on a lot of research. What I did was put all the models I was thinking of, and then I distilled it into two simple strategies. One is provide emotional or social support, and the next is model healthy work habits. So how do we provide emotional support? It is there are actually four types of support that we can give other people. The first is emotional support. So say someone found out they were sick, or they contracted COVID, right? How do you provide support there? You provide emotional support by empathizing with them, being with them, expressing care for them, checking in on them. The next is instrumental support. How do you provide that? If they need anything financial, perhaps providing, it's more functional, cash or in kinds, as they say. If they need meds, linking them to certain resources such as doctors, perhaps if they need financial assistance. The the third type of support would be informational support, providing them with information that they need. Okay, I heard this is like this is what you need to do, or you might want to consider this, you might want to visit this doctor, you might want to visit this website. There are lots of good resources on how to take care of yourself if you have COVID, right? And the last would be what's the term for it again? It's appraisal support. It's providing feedback. So with that support, you say, okay, perhaps you're not taking care of yourself well enough. Why don't you sleep more? Why don't you rest more? Or you need to just evaluating that. Or you've been too stressed. I think you're trying to take on too many things. You're sick right now. Take a break. It's providing the feedback. It's being a mirror for them, telling them something they need to know so that they can think about it and process it. That's the type of support that we can give to others now. And the next, and I think this is very important, is to model healthy work habits. So perhaps setting a routine, setting boundaries, saying I will work from this time to this time, this time to this time, I am with my family, and sticking to that rule. Um, Perhaps if you have tips, or if you're quite efficient at this, doing it, modeling it for others so that others can see, and then allowing others to learn from you. Sometimes it doesn't really help to teach, right? But if we act it out, if we walk the talk, then it's more valuable for other people. And we can do this for each other in the workplace. If they see that, okay, she is coping better because she has more time for her family, she is getting enough rest, then that might be helpful for others as well. Others hopefully can aspire to have that for themselves. This is a type of social support. I explained it ahead, I'm sorry, but yes, that's it. And just to end with this, when I is replaced by we, even illness becomes wellness. And I put these photos of animals there because these animals seem to be different, right? But they are caring for each other in ways that only they can explain. And I hope us in our differences can also provide this to each other and find that common humanity in all of us so that it links us better. That's it. I hope this leaves you with something to think about and something to consider as well for your workplace. Again, I went over. I am sorry, but yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Miss Joey. And it's okay you went over time. I mean, I think many of the things you said is are good insight, for us and in our company. And before we move on to the discussion with our panelists, so I just want to comment that one thing that struck me in your talk, well, everything was good, by the way. They all struck me. But one thing I could personally connect with was the fact that, yes, there is discrimination. And sometimes it can come very subtly. And this can cause us to not unite, especially during a time of crisis. I remember on my very first day, on my very first job, in my old job, previous job, para siyang high school setting. There was a canteen, puro mga teachers. I taught in Xavier, right? So may mga teachers, and I was looking for a table to sit in. Like, where will I sit, diba? So I sat with this group of 5 teachers in this table, and the topic was street food. When I sat there, wala pang 2 minutes. Oh, syempre ikaw, Jello, di ka makakonect sa street food, diba? So I can, but pointing that out, saying it out loud, syempre it creates a wall, 'di ba? It made me feel na, oh, that one difference, maybe this group isn't for me, 'di ba? Those subtle jabs, those subtle jokes, kahit joke lang siya, 'di ba? Especially said during a time like this, can really bring people apart. When no matter how different you are from one another, this pandemic, this crisis connects all of us. Rich or
Yes.
poor, whether you live in the province, whether you live in the metropolis, it connects all of us despite our differences. So I think one takeaway from your talk, don't focus on our differences. Focus on what connects us. We all have our own experiences. We are affected in many, many ways. But there's one fact: the pandemic affects all of us, no? And we must focus on this commonality to unite as one group. We have to respect each other, listen to each other, don't invalidate what people say, diba? A struggle's a struggle. And I thank you, Miss Joey, for pointing it out. No? They say nga nothing in human history has ever brought all of humanity together like this pandemic. At least not in the last few hundred years. So thank you, Miss Joey, for that. No? And I'd like to invite our viewers right now. If you have questions, please type in the chat box. No? For the meantime, I'd like to welcome my co-MC. She's a Deputy Chief Sales Officer from the Property Development Unit. Welcome, Ms. Bel Manalo. Good morning, Ms. Bel.
Yeah, good morning, Jello. Good morning, JNG, and welcome to JNG Wellness Wednesday. All right. Well, as for me, I'm sorry. Good morning, Miss Joey. Yeah. Ako lang just an additional to the to what Jella said about the discrimination. Of course, everybody experienced discrimination, but just for me is that it is really the sense of belongingness. Then sometimes, of course, especially if you are new to the group, of course, you will what do you call this, you will experience that, but again yung respect, siguro a little bit of talagang mag-exert ka ng effort para makapag-dwell ka with the group. So again, yung siguro as time goes by, of course, yung talagang ako gusto ko yung kay Dr. Hani Karandang talking about the discipline. Yung sinasabi niya na yung going back to the basics. So, if you feel like hindi ka or nakalihis ka dun sa kung ano yung gusto ng kung ano yung goal ng team or ng group. So you just yung go back to basic, isipin mo lang yung of course the clarity. Syempre kailangan you are tawag dito yung clarity ng roles, something like that. And then yung communication, it is very important, the communication. So sa akin lang, the discrimination, yes, nafe-feel natin yan, but again, we can overcome it. So yun. Ako kasi honestly speaking, ako personally, I experienced the discrimination too. But over time na-overcome talaga siya. And
Yes.
until such time na mabelong ka dun sa team or sa group na yun. It's a matter of respect lang din.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Jello. So,
Well, for that, no, tama ka discrimination, sometimes kahit di sadya, di ba? Kahit na your intentions not to offend the other person, di ba? But when you say something that creates a sense of divisiveness, di ba? That can be it, di ba? And that's very dangerous, especially in a time like this. But tama kayo, as time goes by, as you drive more with the group, nawawala naman yung barriers. We just need to be extra alert right now, given what we have, no? So, Miss Bell, would it be okay for you to introduce to us who are our panelists for this morning? So, hello, panelists. Please turn on your videos. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Again, good morning, JNG. Included in our panel are from RMU, Miss Chico Sandico, our Communication Management Group. And also from Energy Development Unit, Mr. Reynan Tayag, he's our Internal Audit Manager. And then from Hospitality Development Unit, Ms. Laris Magay, our Learning and Development Manager. And last but not the least is from PDU, Mr. Lance Ting, our Market Research Assistant.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bell. So welcome everyone to our discussion for this morning. So I give the floor to you. We'd like to know, number one, what are your comments or questions, diba, in response to the talk this morning, and what can you do in your own way to inspire unity in your particular line of work? Okay, so perhaps we could start first with Sir Reynan. Good morning, Sir Reynan.
Good morning, Jello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Joey, for that very insightful discussion. No? Siguro one thing that struck me on her discussion is yung part nung pinakaunang slide na a community that is resilient is when the members are connected to one another and work together. And I remember this short story about the anthropologist Margaret Mead when she was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of a civilization. So akala ng mga estudyante, ang sasabihin niya would be fish hooks, clay pots, or grinding stones. And then Mead said that the first sign of a civilization in the Asian culture is a femur or a thigh bone that have been broken and then healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. But a broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay to the one who fell or has bound up the wound, has carried that person to safety, and has tended to the person to recovery. Thus, helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts. That's where we build community. And as an internal auditor, IA's function is known to independently perform our responsibilities objectively. And unity, on the other hand, is being one or in harmony towards a common goal. So I can say that our independent role can inspire unity in the workplace, knowing and communicating to the team that we act objectively and we are working to achieve a common goal. That is to strengthen the effectiveness of processes, controls, and risk management, all for the benefit of the company, the employees, our customers, and the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Raynan. Miss Joey, ang ganda ng kanyang ang ganda ng kanyang analogy, no? Tama eh, 'di ba? When an animal will break its leg in the wild, usually it means certain death for the animal. Di na siya makatakbo, it can't hunt anymore. But somehow, tayo, human beings, why do we survive broken bones sometimes? Because people care for us, 'di ba? So the crisis really calls on our humanity, 'di ba? How can we be more human? How can we look after each other more? No? So thank you for that, Sir Raynan. Okay. Perhaps Miss Bell, who can we now ask po?
Let us hear from Lance Ting. I guess again from PDU, of course, from PDU. Lance.
Hello,
Hi,
good
Lance.
morning. Hello. So one of the things that I really connected with was the idea of respect and listening to each other. I think that's one of the most important things in any line of work in any organization. The ability to communicate with one another and more importantly, respect the ideas of others so that you can work so that when you communicate with one another, you'll be able to know what the other party wants to say. And if you work together towards a common goal, you'll be able to achieve a lot of things. So in my line of work, market research, it is a lot of grinding, a lot of researching and communicating with other people. A lot of field work before. Now you can't do field work right now, but before there was field work. And you really needed to work with one another that you can collect the data. There's a lot of data to go through. And if you're only one person, that it might take forever to analyze this data. But if you work with your colleagues, your teammates, and communicate with each other the data that you analyze, and you'll be able to present this data, and it will it will not only help you, but it will also help everyone in the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lance, for that. No, thank you, Lance. All right. Miss Joey, would you have anything to add in response?
Yeah, based on like I like the Margaret Mead anecdote as well. It is very important, right? Building that society where people are there for each other. And as what Lance was saying, if one person just worked on it, or if it's just one person working, even, it's difficult. But if more people are involved, it works better or it's faster. And I guess with that, when it comes to learning, a lot of independent learning and working is happening now. So we're, instead of having meetings, collaborating together, we're doing it separately in our own homes, right? And we're trying to do it online. The thing is, a lot of learning happens sometimes when we communicate with others. Like, you learn about accounting policies, or magsisink in talaga yung accounting policies or yung purpose ng marketing material na to when you're communicating informally, right? Kasi sa accounting, kailangan ganyan, ganyan, ganyan. Or sa marketing, kaya namin gusto gawin yung program na to because this is what we want to highlight. Sometimes you can write it out on paper, expect people to read it and get it. But a lot of times, we won't really appreciate until someone explains to us, right? And if we have those informal gatherings, that's when it sinks in. And with market research, minsan ganun eh. Nakikita mo na yung data, but that's hard data. But if it's explained to you by someone, parang mas nalilinawan tayo. And I think that's what happens with communities or organizations that are resilient. They have those spots where they can learn from each other. And natanggal yun sa atin because the office is taken away from us. And I guess the question is now, how do you recreate it online? Just as an example, in Bolata, we used to have the inner room. This is where at the end of your session, parang therapist, you're talking to someone and it's one client after the other. At the end of the day or in between sessions, we have this room na parang it's just an open space na you can be sabaw because you have so much on your head already. And you can say everything, or you can say, okay, my client is like this, I'm stumped, what do I do? Tapos other people will ask you questions. Ano ba nangyari? Or bakit ba ganun? What are you sometimes, and there's that space where we can just talk about it, unload, and it frees up the energy for other things to happen. And sometimes you just need someone asking you a question, or sometimes even listening to you. And it was gone it was taken away from us. So now we feel tired. Like I have half the caseload as I had when I was working on site in the center, but then I feel more tired. And I think it was partly because that was taken away from us. And it could be the same for you guys. You had those informal, those walk from like the elevator to the office. Tapos ang dami mo nang na-accomplish pala. You cleared up so many things. You agreed on so many things. You don't have that now. So what we tried to do, we came up with chat groups, separate chat groups, right? Or we came up with a Facebook group that's very informal. So it's a private group. Everyone is there. People can post random questions. And it was like our virtual inner room. Okay, you can do something or share, what do you call that? Share meals, if that work, or share break times together. Have a coffee break, even if it's not working. Just talk like that. So yeah.
So thank you for that, Miss Joey. Thank you for that. And I hope we get to have, time for that too, yung kumustahan, 'di ba? Yung mga simpleng checking up on your coworker, asking how they are, and just that awareness that, because we're all going through something difficult right now, 'di ba? How can we continue to transact and work together and expect output while being aware that the person we're talking to is going through something just like what we all are, right? So thank you for that, Miss Joey. So I think right now the next person we can ask is, of course, Miss Joey, your classmate and batchmate, Miss Chico Sandico. So good morning, Miss Chico.
Hi, Jella. Hi, Joe. Okay. So I really appreciated a lot of what you said. I really loved how you started with connectedness. And I loved when you talked about Pope Francis and you talked about encounters. Because I think that's really, and that's what everyone has been saying also earlier. It's really key to being united and understanding one another. Because it is inevitable, even when we have a shared workspace, diba? Even when we're in the office or we're all working on 37th or 41st or 35th, by virtue of our roles, we don't actually have the luxury of interacting with one another So it's very easy for somebody in, say, let's say my group in communications, to not have a good understanding of what the people in, say, finance are doing, diba? And so like diba, like it would be like parang maybe parang, and I guess that's also where some of the tensions arise, because we don't understand and fully appreciate what the others are trying to do. Whether it's my team or it's a different team, diba? Because we all have specific roles, and when we're driven towards that goal, we're just like, well, you have to meet it, diba? That's your job, that's your responsibility. And sometimes we're so micro focused on what we're supposed to do that we lack the empathy to the other people who are also contributing to our end goal anyway. Kasi nga we're all interconnected, we all have the same roots, we all have the same end goal at the end, which is to contribute to the company's mission and goals and success. We just have different ways of doing it. And it's something, it's funny how when you were talking, I also remembered, our days when we were in our old company, and we would also have those tensions, diba? Parang I remember, my favorite talaga, it was really the tension between marketing and accounting, kasi like, in our old company talagang we were spend, 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 kasi accounting naman, parang stop spending, right? So you would have those tensions and they wouldn't understand each other. And one of the things that one of my mentors, diba, like, one of my favorite bosses, si Eric, diba, our CEO. One of the great pieces of advice that he gave me was, he goes, you know what, you need to take an MBWA. And I'm like, what the heck is that, right? And he told me it's called management by walking around. So that's the best thing that we can do. You have to go out and you have to talk to people and you have to really meet them and encounter them. Even if it for you, it's like, it might be like, I don't have time for this, diba? But I have to finish this. I don't have time to talk to people, outside my, but that was a very good and important lesson to me, because at the end of the day, when you're in an organization, even if you're, diba, parang a single contributor, you still belong to like a bigger ecosystem, and you cannot afford to not parang want to get along with everybody else. And parang I just feel like what you said today really validated that, because at the end of the day, parang we don't know what the other people, diba, are going through. We always have to have an understanding of where they're coming from. Parang we also have to see the human being in them, like for example, accounting people or finance people, they're not ATM machines, right? or or like for example in communications, diba? It's parang there's also a process to it, diba? We're not like a printer or a printing press and you just press that and then it comes out. So we just really all have to have that certain empathy for one another and understand each other. And parang I think that's also one of the, what one person once asked me, what do you think is wrong with the Philippines, diba? What do you think is wrong with the Philippines? Why are we in this state? And I told that person, I think it's really because we don't really care. Not because we don't care, parang we're too self-centered. It's all about parang, like for example, these days, diba, it's pandemic, and then we're all like, I have to take care of myself, I have to take care of my family. Bahala na kayo, diba? I don't care what happens to you, but I will focus on myself. That's why I loved that you said we're really a community, and that's the only way that we can be successful, when we start kind of going out of our little bubbles and just parang kind of showing compassion to the others. And I think that's how we really succeed.
Thank you, Chico.
Thank you for that, Miss Chico, no? Miss Joey, would you have a response or a reaction to that?
Yeah, I love what you said, and thank you for validating, because yeah, I remember Chico from when we were working. I think we were much younger then, so we didn't know a lot of these things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But when it's brought to light, you become aware, okay, I contributed to that tension. it wasn't just them. I was also part of it. And then you realize I could have done this. Well, now we know, right?
Right.
And thank you.
Thank you, Miss Joey. Thank you, Miss Chico. And that's very true, no? Sometimes here in our company, kung if the demands in our work is piling up, all we care about is our output, diba? But
Yeah.
our output also relies on the output of other people, no? So we have to remember these people have their own experiences, have their own context, diba? And we need to remember that while doing our best to, of course, reach our objectives. No? So thank you for that reminder, Miss Chico. Okay. And of course, last but not least, we have Miss Lorice Magay. So, good morning, Miss Lorice.
Hi, good
Right.
morning, everybody. Good morning, Jello. Good morning, Miss Bell. Good morning to my co-panelists. And again, Miss Joey, thank you for another interesting topic. So I've listened or I've watched your previous sessions, and it's such a refreshing and learning experience. So I think my key takeaways from this session is, the idea of separatedness. So you mentioned it, and I think Ms. Chico and I feel the same way, that what I think now more than ever during this pandemic, we become so wrapped up in our own problems, in our own struggles, that we forget that other people have their own struggles and own problems as well. So it's not just your personal struggle, but of course your struggles in the office. So you just think of your own deadlines, or how your boss is gonna react, or how the output of the department is gonna turn out. That you forget that there are also other departments, or also other people that you need to work with for it to become successful. So empathy is really, really important. So I think yun yung nakakalimutan ng karamihan sa atin. Even I myself, I forget that sometimes, kasi iniisip ko, may problema ako eh. So why should I think of other people? I need to think of myself first. So I think we really need to practice empathy more than ever. And of course, as part of human resources, that's also one of the things that we are working on. It's really difficult to keep unity in the organization, kasi we don't really get to see each other anymore face to face. So talagang we usually do general assemblies via Zoom, meetings via Zoom, or phone calls na lang, kasi again, we have to practice social distancing. But at least we try to really get together, at least virtually, just to check up on each other. I remember yung first parang virtual general assembly namin during the ECQ. It was like May. So we haven't seen each other for the last 2 months. And when we did the Zoom and everyone had their videos on, we were so happy to see each other. So I think yung simple way na getting together virtually, so that's the one thing that we could do. And also as part of training, for us to understand the operational demands of the different departments, we do departmental learning sessions. So we invite people from different departments to talk about their policies, their procedures, so that other departments could also understand, ganito pala yung operations ni front office, ganito pala yung operations ni housekeeping. So they realize that it's not easy. They have their own struggles also. So medyo, kumbaga, naintindihan namin, and we get to understand where they're coming from, and mas nagkakaroon ng cooperation with one another. So that's it. So thank you very much.
Lorice, no, tama eh. Again, there should always be time set aside to understand the work of people we work with, no? So it demands, yes, it may demand more effort during this pandemic, but if that effort of reaching out to people, understanding their context can yield so many benefits for all of us, then why not, no? So thank you, Miss Lorice. And so we have more comments here actually. No? Some people chat in our chat box, and some even texted me personally. No? So here's a comment from Sir Ed Calabio. Yes, we must be united, but let's make sure that the source of our unity can sustain our individual goals and convictions. The world may offer lots of choices, but let's know the intentions of our Creator. God knows exactly what His created needs, rather than what the world offers. No? From John 15, verse 5, I am the vine, You are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is that it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. No? So I think what Sir Ed is saying is that the source of our being united must be sustainable. And of course, who unites us all is our creator, it's God. No? And we thank Sir Ed Calabio for that, no? For that very beautiful reminder. God knows what we need, God knows what's in our hearts, and God knows all. And because God knows all will be well. So thank you for that, Sir Ed. We have a question here from anonymous person, no? Sabi niya, how do you motivate your peer if the peer is feeling fed up with disrespectful boss? No? Pain must be really bad. So I guess the person is coming from the experience that the boss isn't really that empathetic, diba? Isn't doesn't really take into account what the person's going through. So how could we respond to bosses and even peers who may act that way, Miss Joey?
I guess for this, there's a long answer, but my short answer would be the slides on the types of social support, emotional support, instrumental support, informational support, or appraisal support. I guess with that, we have to stick to our boundaries even. I guess that's what's important. Like, this is your peers' difficulty or problem. So you're there to support, but it's his to deal with, right? So either one, emotional, we listen. We provide the space for him to vent. Because if it's painful for him, or if he's feeling unheard, not validated, just listening would be enough. We could provide advice in the form of information. What can you do next? Right? I would do this. Why don't you try this? That might help. It could be instrumental. Perhaps he needs something functional or something material to help him with this.
Right.
He's not feeling heard. He doesn't have enough internet. Baka, that might help, whatever the problem is. But if it's mostly with a disrespectful boss, I think emotional and appraisal would be helpful. Like appraisal in the form of feedback. What do you think you're doing that you're contributing to this dynamic with your boss? Right? Is it because you're not speaking up? Is it because you're saying okay but you don't really mean it? Is it because you're not communicating with your boss? So your boss is feeling the negative energy for you, but no one is saying it, right? And sometimes our leader, at this stage, every leader should step up, I feel, and really be there for their team. But there are certain instances when we have to be empathic as well. Perhaps our boss does not have it in them at that moment. We can do something about it. So you can provide the advice that, why don't you say something? Why don't you reach out? If you feel disrespected, if you feel demotivated, I understand, I get it. That's one. But you have to do something about it.
Right.
Because this is your job. And a lot is at stake here. It's not just you, it's all of us, right? But first, provide that vehicle that perhaps they just need to be heard.
Okay, thank you, Miss Joey.
Okay.
Right. We also have more. Actually, there are more questions. I think is triggered the right word? I don't know. There are more questions here. Oh yeah. So from Miss Chrissy, in groups, diba? In groups have blinders or colored glasses that influence how they perceive the world and interact with people. You mentioned earlier that it would be best to call out stereotyping and see others for themselves instead of their group identity. What if there is no one calling it out? How can someone take out his own blinders, especially in this virtual pandemic environment? Very, very timely.
That's true. I guess if no one calls it out, then it won't be addressed.
Right.
Sometimes other people might notice it, they might do something about it, but that would be if they are in a position to do so. HR might notice that this is happening and they will align or adjust, calibrate the policies to be more inclusive. But if doesn't get called out and you're the only one who knows this is it, what happens then? What if you're just being preying or you're being too sensitive, right? You don't know, but there's still this sense of injustice in you. So it might help to bring it up to someone you trust. This is how I feel. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah.
Have it validated, get a sense of it. And if you both of you are feeling the same thing, then perhaps there's something more to that. Then you can bring it up.
There's a case. I mean, if
Yeah.
if you agree on it, diba? And of course, communication, diba? But I think
Yes.
moreover, true leaders, real leaders, no matter how accomplished or decorated they may be, no, should always learn how to look inwards, diba? Diba?
Yeah.
Did I do a good job? What can I always improve on? Because no matter how successful you are, there's always something to improve on, always something to learn, no? So thank you for that. So one person said, maybe I'm more optimistic than others. I really think we each have an instinctively social and community-oriented self. Even in this pandemic, there have been so many initiatives led by private individuals and groups to help frontliners, poor families, farmers, etc. Despite the logistical challenges, many stepped outside their own bubble to help. But we need a platform or support group for the instinct to help. If we find like-minded individuals, great. If we don't, we may retreat to our own bubble. So for me, the key is reaching out to like-minded people and communities. Create new channels to help. It does not have to be a super organized platform. The same applies at work. Okay? So thank you, sir or ma'am, for that wonderful comment and reminder. No, of course, humans, as we all know, are designed to be good. And if we rely on our human instinct to care for each other, diba, then we can mend wounds. And that's what Sir Raynan said, we could heal broken bones. So thank you for that, sir. No? Sir Ed Calabi also added, racism is one example of man's selfish pride. Our God is showing us an example of humility. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 to 4. Do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his interests, but also to the interests of others. That's how our Lord is telling us that we have to support each other. No? Don't just care about yourself. Filipinos are very filial, diba? We care about our families, about ourselves. But we must not just care for ourselves at the expense of other people. Always take into account other people. So thank you for that, Sir Ed. No? We have one last, I think, one last question here. Okay, anonymous question. His takeaway: it takes a lot of humility to connect and unite with each other. Question to Miss Joey: how do you deal with people that just dislike you or maybe hate you for some strange reason? No? How do you deal with prejudice, even if you're trying to humble yourself? So I think it's coming from a place where the fact that, you really can't please everybody. And sometimes there are people who, kung hindi kanya trip, diba? May mga ganun eh. Kung hindi kanya trip, I will not treat you well. Bahala ka, diba? So, how can you cope with that, Miss Joey? And I think it's connected to the question a while ago, right? Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And that is a very good question, I think. Sometimes we try to connect and we still don't get through, or we still feel discriminated against or misunderstood, or we feel boxed. So ganito tayo, we're not being accepted. It's difficult in certain teams, definitely. And I feel that, I guess for me, as long as we try to connect, then that is a big deal already.
Right.
And if in trying we don't succeed in that endeavor of being liked or accepted, is it still within our control? Can we still do something about it? That's the question to ask. Do I have to change myself just to be accepted in this group? That's another question. Gagawin mo ba yun? Because if you make that change, make that adjustment, what part of your value is affected? If they don't like you because of how you talk or how you walk, and that's who you are, that's you sacrificing your identity just to be part of the group.
Right.
And that is also another danger in groupthink. over conformity.
Mhm.
So there is now the balance and the difficulty. Now we can do certain things for others. We can adjust to be part of the community. But how much of ourselves are we willing to sacrifice to be part of that group? And I think that's an important question we have to ask.
Right.
Because at a certain point in time, it is not on us already. It is not on us anymore. It is on the system or in the environment that we're in. And then at this age as well, or I guess when we become adults, we come to terms with the fact that yes, we cannot please everybody. Not everyone will like us or see us. And then we just learn to accept. I am still respecting you, even if I'm getting this from you. I am still treating you with courtesy, and I'm still doing my best to do my job. If that is not okay with you, but I know I am doing what I can naman, then that is on you na.
Yeah.
That's on them. And that's when we draw the line and say, okay, this is it. This is who I am. This is the best that I'm giving right now. Take it
Thank
or
you.
so yeah.
Thank you
Thank
for that, Miss Joey. No, I totally agree with you. There was a time in my life that I use this word loosely, a bully. Well, I define bully as someone who would like to pick on me. Okay, diba? So, and no matter, minsan in my mind, sobrang gigil ko na, in my mind, sinasakal ko na siya and everything. Pero, if we always choose to do what's right, if we always choose to treat people with respect and love, despite what they do to you, there's nothing to regret. Uh, Nothing can go wrong. And in fact, those acts of kindness can even influence the other person to change. No? And I can say that that bully and I are friends. I think. So again, thank you, Miss Joey. Do you have any last comments from our panelists?
Um, well, for me talaga, yung relationship, building a good relationship with the colleagues is very much important. Even if you're just new, di ba? So, kasi kapag yung team members mo ay, uh, if you build a good relationship with the team members, of course, yung care and respect. So, with that, mas madali yung na-achieve what is your goal. Just like with us in sales, so paano ba namin napopromote yung unity, especially with us that we are dealing with our external partners, our sellers. So it is very important for us to build a good relationship with our sellers because kapag ka hindi ka nakapag-build sa kanila, iiwanan ka talaga nila. So, and of course, it is our bread and butter. For us in sales, it is the sales coming from our external partners, particularly the sellers, is the bread and butter. So it is really, really very important. With that, you can get the very good support system. Even with our colleagues in the office, of course, yes, it is true that we came from a different department, and not all the things that they did or what I did is alam ng bawat isa. So it is very important to communicate. So ako nga hindi na ako lalayo just like what happened right now, di ba? So paano natin nakukuha yung support system? So a classic example right now is that during the pandemic, so there are some people selling like a piece of cake or something, diba? Though it is not, hindi mo siya kailangan. But of course, dahil naging maganda yung relationship mo with this person, of course, you are, diba, nag-acquire ka or bumibili ka ng kanyang goods to support to support that person. So, sa akin talaga, it is really important in building a good relationship regardless of course, sa office or sa external, but of course, especially in your family. So, yun. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Joey, for that wonderful presentation. Sobrang na-appreciate ko rin talaga siya. And it adds me on, di ba? Kapag siyempre, minsan feeling mo na-lost ka. So, maganda. Sobrang nakaka-inspire yung yung sa presentation. Thank you so much, Miss Joey.
Thank you so much, Miss Bella and Miss Joey. And to end the session, I'd like to share one last insight to wrap up everything we said. No, a friend of mine just sent to me that That was a very timely message since every person has experienced discouragement, anxiety, and feeling very lonely. But we're going through the same thing. I remember I was talking to a friend last Saturday after we sang songs of worship. The importance of support system, the importance of sharing yourself, difficulties or struggles. Parang burning of wood lang. Pag nahiwala yung isang wood, mawawala yung fire na meron siya. The challenge is for us, how do we all keep burning together? Not in a bad way. Burning as a metaphor for burning or for shining a light together. How do we keep united? You know, this pandemic, despite how it separates us, must not bring about the worst of humanity. It must not bring about our selfishness, our ignorance. Rather, it should bring about the best of humanity, the best that which the Lord wants for all of us. All of us are created in God's image. And therefore, we can ask ourselves every day, how can I act today in God's image? How can I be like Christ to those around me? How can this pandemic bring out the best in me? So I hope moving forward, guys, we here in JNG, we not only work, we not only transact, but we learn to reach out and to understand one another. Lahat tayo may pinagdadaanan, no? Lahat tayo may kanya-kanyang problema. So the best we can do is to help each other out, to look out for each other, while of course accomplishing our objectives. So once again, thank you, Miss Joey. Thank you, Miss Bell, Sir Reynan, Miss Laris, Sir Lance, and Miss Chico, no, for this very fruitful and engaging discussion. Would it be okay for me to take a photo of everyone, just to smile before the camera? I mean, before your own cameras. let me just screenshot our meeting. Okay, ready? 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed. We hope we learned a lot. And I'll see you next week or on our next one this Wednesday. So thank you, Miss Joey. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.